And this is a competitive game where players are trying to build the most biodiverse ecosystem. Players are each going to have their own individual player boards where they're going to be playing different cards for different costs, with each of those cards only being able to be played into an ecosystem that supports that card. The cards can be different animals or plants, and adjacent cards can benefit from each other if you get the right synergies, and each card is going to be introducing a new action that players can perform on their turn. The way the game plays is that each player is going to be starting with 2 cards out on their board, which is going to allow them to have a few actions right out of the gate, but one of those cards is going to be an animal, and one of those cards is going to be a plant. Each round represents the 4 seasons in a year where players are going to be taking different actions depending on the season, but at the start of a round, each player is going to be able to draw 2 more cards into their hand, and then they'll also be able to collect 2 resources of their choice. The resources have a few applications within the game, but their main use is to pay for the cards when you put them into play, because the resources do represent food for the animals or light for your plants. And when you do pay to put a card into your tableau, you also have to take into consideration the restriction that certain cards can only be played to the marsh, the prairie, or the jungle, or some combination of the 3. Certain animals can also create nests and have babies if you put them adjacent to the appropriate vegetation, so you'll also want to take that into consideration if you want to maximize your points throughout the game. But there are also some predators as well that would be happy to do your babysitting. But a really neat aspect of this game is that each card you add into your tableau is going to have a unique action specific to that card, and you'll be able to take actions periodically throughout each of the seasons. But something to note here is that each card's action can only be used once in the entire game. So once you used an action, you'll never be able to use it for the rest of the game, which means that you really want to be thinking about when you use these actions, because even though an action might be useful now, it might be a lot more powerful later in the game. But players are going to be gaining victory points for placing their cards, as well as performing various actions and having babies and feeding those babies. But then there'll also be different objectives that players will be trying to complete, such as filling up different rows or columns, or having certain patterns of vegetation or animals according to the cards that were drawn for that game. The end of the game is triggered if a player maxes out the victory point track, or if a player's tableau is completely full. And then at that point, you're going to be adding up the victory points for each of the players. Then the player with the most victory points wins the game, and if you are interested to learn more about this one, I will have it linked in the description below.